I stood in my parents' driveway, hands shaking, staring at the sold sign on what used to be my lake house across the street. My sister Amanda just got married yesterday. $170,000. Ice sculptures, live orchestra, imported flowers. My mother hugged me at the reception, whispered how proud she was of both her children. But this morning, I got the call from my real estate attorney. My lake house, the one my grandfather left me, was gone. Sold 3 weeks ago. The money, all of it, paid for Amanda's fairy tale wedding. They forged my signature. My foot pressed harder on the accelerator as I drove back to their house in suburban Connecticut. The wedding had been yesterday. 24 hours ago, I was dancing with my mother, making a toast to my little sister, smiling for photographs. Now my entire world had collapsed, and they knew. They had to have known. I pulled into their driveway too fast, tires squealing slightly on the concrete. Through the large bay window, I could see them. My parents, Amanda, and her new husband Brandon, all gathered around the dining room table, champagne glasses, laughter, wedding photos, spread across the mahogany surface. I didn't knock. The door was unlocked, and I pushed through it hard enough that it banged against the wall. They looked up. My mother, Patricia, had a mimosa halfway to her lips. My father, Gregory, was mid-sentence, probably telling some story about the ceremony. Amanda was glowing in her post-wedding bliss, her hand entwined with Brandon's. "William," my mother said, setting down her glass carefully. "We didn't expect you back so soon." "My lake house," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You sold my lake house." There was a beat of silence. Then my father set down his own glass and leaned back in his chair with the casual confidence of a man who'd spent 30 years practicing law. "Yes," he said simply. "We did." "No denial. No apology. Just confirmation." "That property was left to me," I said. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides. "My grandfather left it to me specifically in his will 5 years ago. It was mine. My name was on the deed." "How did you even—" "Sit down, William," my father interrupted. "You're being dramatic." "Dramatic?" The word came out louder than I intended. "You stole my property. You sold a house worth $350,000 without my knowledge or permission. That's not dramatic. That's theft." Amanda shifted in her seat, and for just a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. But then Brandon squeezed her hand, and her expression hardened. "You don't need a vacation house," my mother said. Her tone was gentle, almost soothing, as if she were explaining something simple to a child. "You're single. You live in an apartment." Amanda needed a proper wedding. Family is about sacrifice, William. Surely Grandpa would have wanted the money to go toward family happiness. "Grandpa left it to me," I said. Each word came out clipped, barely controlled. "Not to you. Not to Amanda. To me. There's a reason for that." My father's eyes narrowed slightly. "And what reason would that be?" The implication hung in the air. We all knew the reason. My entire childhood had been a study in favoritism. Amanda got the private school education while I attended public school. Amanda received a brand new car at 16 while I saved for 2 years to buy a rusted sedan at 22. Amanda's college was fully funded while I was still making payments on my student loans at 31 years old. Grandpa had seen it. He'd always seen it. That lake house was his way of balancing the scales, even after his death. "You know exactly why," I said quietly. "Your grandfather was old," my mother said. "He wasn't thinking clearly toward the end. He was perfectly clear when he made that will. I was there when he told me about it." I turned to my father. "How did you even do it? The house was in my name. Only my name." Gregory smiled then. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a chess player who just announced checkmate. "I'm a retired attorney with 30 years of experience and extensive connections in the legal community," he said. "Documents can be created. Signatures can be replicated. Power of attorney paperwork can be filed. It's remarkably straightforward when you know what you're doing." My stomach dropped. "You forged my signature." "Such an ugly word," he said. "I prefer to think of it as handling a family matter efficiently." "That's fraud. That's a felony." He laughed. Actually laughed. "And who's going to believe you? I have 3 decades of impeccable legal reputation. You have a middle management position at a financial firm, and a one-bedroom apartment in a mediocre neighborhood. When it comes down to credibility, who do you think wins? Brandon spoke for the first time. Thanks for the wedding present, man. His smirk made my blood boil. That ice sculpture was incredible. Cost 12 grand alone. Amanda giggled. Actually giggled. The flowers were my favorite. Do you know they were flown in from Ecuador? The wedding planner said it was the biggest budget she'd worked with all year. $170,000, I said. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. You spent $170,000 of my money on one day. Our money, my mother corrected gently. Family money. That's how family works, William. We all contribute to each other's happiness. I didn't contribute. You stole from me. You're being very selfish right now, Amanda said. Her voice had an edge to it, a petulance I'd heard countless times growing up whenever she didn't get her way. This was the most important day of my life, and you're trying to ruin it because you're jealous. Jealous? I stared at her. Amanda, they stole my house. The house Grandpa left me. They forged legal documents and committed fraud. That's not jealousy. That's a crime. Drama, 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 she said, rolling her eyes. You've always been like this. Always jealous when good things happen to me. Remember when I got into Princeton and you threw a fit? I didn't throw a fit. I asked why Mom and Dad could afford to send you, but told me I'd have to take out loans for state school. Because I worked harder, she said. Because I deserved it more. Just like I deserved a beautiful wedding. Just like I deserve parents who support me instead of a brother who can't be happy for me. I looked at my father. I'm going to sue you. All of you. I'm going to prove the documents were forged. I'm going to get my property back or get compensated for its full value. Gregory stood up slowly. He was a tall man, and he used his height deliberately, looking down at me with barely disguised contempt. Go ahead, he said. By the time you prove anything, the money will be spent, long gone. And in the process, you'll destroy this family forever. You'll be the son who sued his own parents. The brother who tried to ruin his sister's marriage before it even began. Is that really what you want? To be remembered as the petty, vindictive child who couldn't let go of a stupid house? It wasn't stupid to Grandpa. Your grandfather is dead, my mother said. There was steel in her voice now. And the living have needs. Amanda needed a proper start to her marriage. We provided that. You should be proud to have helped, even if you didn't know you were helping. Brandon raised his champagne glass. To family, he said mockingly. They all raised their glasses. Even Amanda. Even my own sister, who'd spent countless summers at that lake house with me when we were kids, who'd learned to swim off that dock, who'd sat with me and Grandpa on the porch watching sunsets. She raised her glass and smiled at me. To family, they chorused. I stood there for another moment, watching them toast with my stolen money, celebrating a wedding paid for with my inheritance. Then I turned and walked toward the door. William, my mother called. Don't do anything you'll regret. I stopped in the doorway, but didn't turn around. I hope it was worth it, I said quietly. Then I left, pulling the door shut behind me with careful control. As I walked to my car, I heard Amanda's voice through the open window, high and satisfied. He's always been so dramatic. Remember when he cried because we couldn't go to his college graduation? So needy. I got in my car, sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. We love you. Please don't make this ugly. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and drove away from the house I'd grown up in, the family I'd thought I knew, and the sister I'd once protected from playground bullies and high school heartbreak. They'd stolen from me, lied to me, mocked me, and they thought they'd get away with it. They had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Jacob Stone in his modest law office in downtown Hartford. Jacob was younger than the gray-haired attorneys I'd initially consulted, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a reputation for taking on cases other lawyers considered too difficult. This is winnable, he said, spreading documents across his desk. The forged signatures can be proven through forensic document analysis. The timeline doesn't make sense. The witnesses they'd need don't exist. But I'm going to be honest with you, William. This won't be cheap, and it won't be quick. How much? $50,000 minimum. Probably more if they fight hard. And your father will fight hard. He knows the system. I'd already checked my savings account that morning. $32,000. Years of careful saving reduced to a number that wasn't enough. I'll take out a loan, I said. Jacob studied me for a moment. There's something else you need to understand. When you sue family, especially parents, people take sides. Your father has connections. He'll use them. I don't care. You should care. But I'll represent you anyway. Let's get started. We filed the lawsuit 3 days later. Fraud, forgery, theft, unjust enrichment, every legal term that applied to what they'd done, Jacob included. The papers were served to my parents and Amanda at their home on a Thursday afternoon. The phone calls started immediately. First was my Aunt Carol, my father's sister. I'd always liked her. She'd sent me birthday cards every year, remembered my graduation, asked about my job. Her voice on the phone was cold fury. How dare you do this to your parents? After everything they've done for you, after they raised you and fed you and put a roof over your head, this is how you repay them? With a lawsuit? Aunt Carol, they stole my house. They paid for a wedding. They helped your sister. And you're so selfish, so jealous, that you drag them through court? Your father is devastated. Your mother has been crying for hours. You should be ashamed. Did they tell you they forged my signature? Your father said you're having some kind of mental breakdown, that you've always been jealous of Amanda's success. He said they're worried about you. That's not true. None of that is true. I've known your father for 53 years. I've known you for 31. I know who I believe. She hung up. Over the next week, I got similar calls from my Uncle Thomas, my cousin Rachel, my second cousin Mark. All of them had heard the same story. William was having a breakdown. William was jealous. William was making false accusations because he couldn't handle his sister's happiness. I tried to explain, sent emails with documentation, left voicemails with the truth. Nobody listened. Or if they did listen, they didn't believe me. My father's reputation, his 3 decades as a respected attorney, carried more weight than my word. I was blocked on social media by 17 family members. My cousin posted publicly about toxic people who can't be happy for others. The post got 63 likes. 3 comments specifically mentioned me by name. Then my mother called. William, please, you're tearing this family apart. Just drop the lawsuit. We can work this out privately. Give me back the money for my house. The money is spent, but we can arrange payments. $100 a month. We'll pay you back slowly. That would take 292 years. Then what do you want? I want justice. I want you to admit what you did. We helped family. That's all we did. Why can't you see that? I hung up on her. It felt like a small victory, but it was something. The real bomb dropped on a Tuesday morning. A process server arrived at my apartment at 7 in the morning. I opened the door in my pajamas, confused, and was handed a thick envelope. My parents were filing for a restraining order against me. I read through the paperwork in disbelief. According to their petition, I'd been harassing them, showing up at their house in an aggressive manner, making threatening phone calls, acting erratically and dangerously. They included statements from Amanda, claiming I'd always had anger issues, that she was afraid for her safety. Brandon provided a statement saying I'd made veiled threats at the wedding. Even my mother included a teary declaration about how worried she was about my mental state. The hearing was scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. I called Jacob immediately. This is a tactic, he said. They're trying to make you look unstable before we get to the real case. Don't panic. We'll fight it. But I was panicking. A restraining order meant I couldn't go near them, couldn't talk to them, would make me look dangerous and unhinged, would undermine everything in my lawsuit. The hearing took place in a small courtroom. My parents arrived with their own attorney, a man named Richard Pemberton, who'd been practicing law even longer than my father. They looked somber, concerned. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The judge was an older man, probably mid-60s. Judge Harold Anderson. He listened as my father's attorney presented their case. Your Honor, Gregory and Patricia Hartwell are concerned parents seeking protection from their son's increasingly erratic behavior. William has a history of mental instability and jealousy regarding his younger sister. After she recently married, he became fixated on financial matters and has been harassing his parents with false accusations. They presented text messages. I barely recognized them. Some were mine, but the tone had been changed, shortened, made to sound aggressive when they'd originally been pleading. My father took the stand. I'd never seen him perform before. It was masterful. He spoke about his concern for me, his heartbreak at having to take this step, his fear that I might hurt myself or others. "I've been practicing law for 30 years, he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I've seen families destroyed by mental illness. I love my son, but I need to protect my wife and daughter from his instability." It was complete fiction, but he delivered it with such sincerity that even I almost believed him. Jacob cross-examined, pointing out inconsistencies, asking about the lawsuit, suggesting this was retaliation rather than genuine fear. But Judge Anderson seemed sympathetic to my father, another lawyer, another older man from the same professional world. The decision came quickly. Temporary restraining order granted. I was to stay 500 feet away from my parents, my sister, and their homes. No contact of any kind. "This is precautionary," the judge said. "We'll revisit in 30 days. But for now, I think some distance is appropriate." I walked out of that courthouse feeling hollow. Jacob put a hand on my shoulder. "This is temporary. We'll get it dismissed. Don't let them see this shake you." But I was shaken. Badly. That afternoon, my phone rang. My boss, Martin Harris. "William, we need to talk. Can you come into the office?" I drove there with a growing sense of dread. Martin met me in his office, door closed. He looked uncomfortable. "I received a call this week," he said, "from someone suggesting there might be concerns about your behavior, about your stability, and about potential irregularities with client accounts." My stomach dropped. "Martin, that's not true. None of that is true." I didn't think so. But HR requires me to investigate any allegations of misconduct. So for now, you're on probationary observation, no client contact. You'll work on internal projects only until this is resolved. "Who called you?" The person didn't leave a name, but they seemed to know a lot about you, about your family situation. My father. It had to be. He still had connections in the financial world. He knew people at competing firms, at regulatory agencies, at every level of the business community. He wasn't just fighting me in court. He was trying to destroy my entire life. I went home that night to my small apartment, sat on my couch in the dark, ate cold pizza from a box I'd had in the fridge for 3 days. I'd lost my house, lost my family, was losing my reputation and potentially my career, was in debt for legal fees, was blocked by family members I'd known my entire life, had a restraining order painting me as dangerous, and my parents and sister were probably at dinner somewhere, celebrating another successful day of destroying me. My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda. "Please stop this. You're embarrassing yourself and hurting everyone. Drop the lawsuit, and Dad will make everything go away. Otherwise, it only gets worse. Love, your sister." It wasn't love. It was a threat wrapped in false concern. I didn't respond. But I also didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my laptop and started researching everything I could find about my parents' finances, their property records, their business dealings, their history. There had to be something, some way to fight back, some weakness in their perfect facade. I just had to find it. 1 month into the legal battle, I was running on coffee and determination. My apartment had become a command center, papers spread across every surface, my laptop open to property record databases at all hours. Jacob had requested discovery documents from my parents' legal team. Weeks of back and forth, of legal maneuvering, of my father's attorney delaying every step. But some documents finally came through. I was reviewing property records for the lake house when something caught my eye. A notation I'd almost missed. There was a home equity line of credit taken out on the property 2 months before it sold. $200,000. Borrowed against a house I owned, using forged documents I never signed. I called Jacob immediately. They didn't just sell my house. They borrowed against it first. "Send me everything." I forwarded the documents, called my bank, requested statements showing where the money from the sale had gone. It took 3 days and multiple calls to the title company, but I finally got a complete picture. The house sold for $350,000. But the $200,000 home equity loan had to be paid off at closing. That meant my parents only netted $150,000 from the sale itself. Add the $200,000 they'd borrowed earlier, and they'd extracted $550,000 total from my property. Amanda's wedding cost $170,000. Where did the other $380,000 go? I brought this to Jacob. He sat back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes narrowed. This is good for us. This proves it wasn't just about paying for a wedding. This is systematic fraud for personal enrichment. We need to amend the lawsuit to include this. We filed an amended complaint 2 days later. Added the home equity loan to the list of fraudulent acts. Requested a complete accounting of where all the money went. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. It lasted exactly 3 days. On Wednesday morning, Martin called me into his office again. His expression was grave. "William, sit down. We've received a formal complaint." "A complaint about what?" "A junior employee in accounting, Sarah Matthews. She's alleged that you made inappropriate advances toward her, made her uncomfortable with unwanted attention." The room tilted. "What? I barely know Sarah. I've maybe spoken to her 3 times in passing. She's filed a written complaint with HR. And there's more." He slid a document across his desk. "We also received an anonymous tip that you've been misappropriating client funds. The compliance department is launching a formal investigation." "Martin, none of this is true. None of it. This is my father. He's doing this." "Your father?" I explained everything. The lawsuit, the restraining order, the systematic campaign to destroy my credibility. Martin listened, his expression troubled. "William, I want to believe you, but these are serious allegations. Until the investigations are complete, I have to suspend you, with pay, for now. But you can't be in the office." I walked out of that building with my few personal items in a cardboard box. Like a cliché from a movie, except this was my actual life falling apart. The HR investigation into Sarah's complaint dragged on for weeks. I was interviewed multiple times, asked invasive questions about my behavior, my interactions with female colleagues, my personal life. Sarah's allegations were vague but damaging. Uncomfortable looks, standing too close, comments that made her uneasy. All of it was fiction, but in the current climate, allegations alone were enough to destroy a career. The financial investigation found nothing. My client accounts were clean, precisely maintained, above reproach. But the stain of the accusation remained. My landlord called. "William, I've had some concerns brought to my attention about your tenancy here. Some suggestions that you might be an unstable tenant. Your lease is up for renewal in 2 months. I'm going to need to think carefully about whether to extend it." My father's reach was everywhere. He knew people, had connections, could make a phone call and plant doubts, raise questions, destroy reputations with whispers and implications. I moved through my days in a fog, stopped shaving regularly, ate whatever was easiest, stopped returning calls from the few friends who still tried to reach out. Late one night, drunk on cheap whiskey, I drove past my parents' house. Kept a careful distance, mindful of the restraining order. But I could see lights on, cars in the driveway. My Aunt Carol's sedan, my Uncle Thomas's truck. They were having a family gathering. I wasn't invited. I'd been erased from the family photo. An email arrived at 2 in the morning, from Amanda. Subject line: "Please stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Drop the lawsuit. Dad will make all of this go away if you just admit you were wrong and apologize publicly. Otherwise, it gets worse. Love, your sister." Love. She signed it with love. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and started digging deeper into my parents' financial records. Property searches in Connecticut, then neighboring states, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, and there, in Florida property records, I found it. A condo in Miami. 3 bedrooms, oceanfront, in a luxury building. Purchased 1 week after my lake house sold. Price, $300,000. The property was held in an LLC, Hartwell Family Holdings. My father was listed as the managing member. They hadn't just stolen my house to pay for Amanda's wedding. They'd bought themselves a vacation property. The wedding was the cover story, the acceptable excuse. But they'd pocketed the difference. I downloaded every document I could find. The LLC registration, the mortgage documents, the closing statements. Proof that the money from my inheritance had gone directly into their pockets. I called Jacob at 7 in the morning. Probably woke him up. I didn't care. I found where the money went. I sent him everything. He called back an hour later. This is exactly what we needed. This proves intent. This proves it was never about helping Amanda. This was about enriching themselves. We amend the complaint again and file for emergency relief. We did. Filed new documents showing the Florida condo purchase. Showed the money trail from my property to their vacation home. Requested immediate asset seizure to prevent further dissipation of funds. For one brief shining moment, I thought maybe this was the turning point. Maybe this was when justice would finally start working in my favor. Then, 3 days later, the police showed up at my apartment. I was arrested, handcuffs and everything, taken to the station, booked, photographed, fingerprinted. The charge: making terroristic threats. Amanda had filed a police report claiming I'd called her and threatened to kill her and burn down her house. She even had a recording of the supposed call. I sat in a holding cell for 8 hours before Jacob got me out on bail. Bail I had to borrow from him because my own money was gone. They're desperate, he said as we walked to his car. This is their last play. They know the Florida condo discovery is damaging, so they're trying one more time to make you look unstable. I never called her. I followed the restraining order exactly. I haven't contacted any of them. I know. We'll prove it. Get your phone records immediately. We did. The records showed conclusively that I hadn't called Amanda's number on the date and time she claimed. No call from my phone to hers. No call from any phone I had access to. We also obtained the recording she'd submitted to police. Jacob sent it to an audio forensic expert. The analysis came back within 48 hours. The recording was fabricated, stitched together from different audio sources. Parts of it appeared to be from old voicemails I'd left years ago, digitally manipulated and taken out of context. Other parts were complete fabrications, possibly AI-generated. Jacob took this directly to the district attorney. They filed a false police report. They submitted fabricated evidence. This is obstruction of justice on top of everything else. The DA, a woman named Margaret Torres, reviewed everything carefully. Then she looked up with an expression I hadn't seen directed at my case before. Genuine concern. Mr. Hartwell, I'm going to be honest with you. When your father first came to my attention, I was skeptical of your claims. Gregory Hartwell has a long-standing reputation in this community. But this fabricated evidence changes everything. This shows a pattern of behavior that concerns me greatly. She opened an official investigation. Criminal charges were now being considered against my parents and Amanda. The terroristic threat charge against me was immediately dropped. The DA apologized for the error. Finally, someone in authority believed me. But the damage was already done. I'd lost my job 3 days earlier. After the arrest, even with the charges dropped, my employer decided they couldn't risk the association. I was terminated, given a severance package, but unemployed nonetheless. My landlord declined to renew my lease. I had 60 days to find a new apartment. My savings were gone. My credit cards were maxed out. I had to move to a cheaper apartment in a neighborhood where car alarms went off regularly, and sirens were background noise. I packed my belongings into cardboard boxes, watched movers load my furniture into a truck, drove across town to a building with peeling paint and a flickering hallway light. This was rock bottom. I'd lost everything. My home, my family, my job, my financial security, my reputation. But I still had the lawsuit. And now, I had criminal prosecutors on my side. I unpacked boxes in my new apartment, hanging clothes in a closet half the size of my old one, stacking books on cheap shelves from a discount store. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You don't know me, but we need to talk. I have information about your father. I stared at the message for a long time. Could be another trap. Could be my father trying to bait me into violating the restraining order. Could be anything, but I was desperate enough to try. I replied, "Who is this? My name is Ethan Sullivan. Your father destroyed my family too. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on Main Street. 2 o'clock, I'll be wearing a blue jacket." I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, reading that message over and over. Maybe I wasn't alone in this after all. The coffee shop was busy for a Wednesday afternoon. I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee I couldn't really afford, and sat in a corner booth where I could watch the door. Ethan Sullivan walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. Mid-40s, blue jacket, as promised, with the careful posture of someone carrying old wounds. He scanned the room, spotted me, and walked over. "William?" he asked. I nodded. He sat down across from me, ordering nothing, just folding his hands on the table between us. "I've been following your case in the court records," he said. "Public filings. Your name caught my attention because I recognized the pattern of what your father is doing. He did the same thing to my family." "Tell me." Ethan's story poured out. 10 years ago, his elderly parents had hired my father to help with estate planning. They were in their 70s, beginning to struggle with memory issues, worried about protecting their assets. My father convinced them to sign power of attorney documents. Then, systematically, he drained their accounts, sold their investment properties, transferred money to accounts he controlled. By the time Ethan realized what was happening, his parents were in assisted living, and $300,000 was missing. "We tried to fight it," Ethan said. "Hired attorneys, filed complaints. But your father is good at this. Really good. The paper trail was complex. The signatures looked legitimate. He had explanations for everything. And my parents were too far gone mentally to testify effectively. The case fell apart. We couldn't prove it. Why didn't the Bar Association do anything? We filed complaints. They investigated. Your father provided documentation showing everything was legitimate business. He had cover stories. He'd been practicing for decades with a clean record. It was our word against his reputation. I'm sorry. My parents died, thinking they'd lost everything through their own confusion. They never knew they'd been robbed. That's what haunts me." Ethan pulled out a folder from his jacket. "I've kept everything. All my documentation, all my evidence. I've been hoping for years that someone else would come forward, that someone else would expose him." He slid the folder across the table. "It's yours. Use it. Show the pattern. Show that your case isn't isolated. This is what he does." I opened the folder. Dozens of pages. Bank statements, property transfers, timeline documents, letters between Ethan and various attorneys. Complaints filed with the state bar. "This is incredible," I said. "It's circumstantial. My parents are dead now, so they can't testify. But it establishes a history, shows this isn't a one-time thing with his own son. This is a pattern of elder abuse and financial fraud." I took the folder, thanked him, promised to use it well. That evening, I met with Jacob in his office. He reviewed Ethan's documents carefully, making notes, cross-referencing dates. "This is helpful," he said. "Very helpful. But there's a problem. The case is old, the victims are deceased. It's hard to introduce into your case directly, but we can use it to show pattern in practice, especially if the criminal prosecutors are interested." The next day, Jacob and I had a meeting with DA Margaret Torres. She reviewed Ethan's documents with her investigators present. "This is disturbing," she said. "If Mr. Sullivan's allegations are accurate, Gregory Hartwell has been running this scheme for over a decade. But proving a 10-year-old case is difficult. But it establishes motive and pattern," Jacob said. "It shows this isn't about a family dispute. It's about a man who preys on vulnerable people, even his own relatives." Margaret nodded. "I'll have my team look into it. But I need you both to be prepared. Building a criminal case takes time, and Gregory Hartwell will have excellent defense attorneys." Time. I had so little of it. My savings were gone. My new apartment was cheaper, but I could barely afford even that. I was living on credit cards and hope. 2 weeks later, another blow. I was going through old boxes I'd stored when moving, looking for anything that might help my case. At the bottom of a box from my grandfather's estate, I found old letters. One envelope was addressed to a friend of my grandfather's. The letter inside was dated 8 months before Grandpa died. In shaky handwriting, my grandfather had written, "Patricia keeps bringing up the lake house, wants me to leave it to both grandchildren or to her directly. Says Amanda deserves it more than William. I've told her no repeatedly. My will is clear. The lake house goes to William. He's the one who appreciates it. He's the one who's always been overlooked. But Patricia won't let it go. She brings it up every visit. It's exhausting. I read that letter 3 times. My grandfather had known. He'd seen the favoritism. He'd specifically wanted to protect me from it. And my mother had tried to manipulate him even then. I called the attorney who'd handled my grandfather's estate. Eugene Hartwell. No relation to my parents, just a coincidental shared name. He was retired now, living in a nursing home in Providence. I drove there the next day. Found him in a common room, doing a crossword puzzle. He was 83 years old, but his mind seemed sharp. Mr. Hartwell? I'm William Hartwell. You handled my grandfather's estate 5 years ago. His expression changed. Recognition and something else. Concern? Maybe. Or regret. William. Yes, I remember. You're the grandson who inherited the lake house. Did anything unusual happen before my grandfather died? Anything involving my mother? Eugene set down his crossword. Sit down, son. Saturday. Your grandfather came to me twice, Eugene said. First time was 6 years ago. He made a comprehensive will, left the lake house to you specifically, set up trusts, everything neat and organized. Second time was 6 weeks before he died. Your mother brought him in. He was on heavy pain medication for his cancer. Very weak, confused at times. What did she want? She wanted him to change the will. Said he'd decided to divide everything equally between you and your sister. Wanted to revoke the specific bequest of the lake house to you. My hands clenched. What did you do? I refused. Told her it seemed highly suspicious to change a will when the testator was medicated and dying, that it would likely be challenged. She got angry, said I was interfering with family matters. She left with your grandfather, and I never saw him again, but the will stayed the same. The will I drafted stayed the same. But she could have gone to another attorney. I always wondered if she tried. I drove back to my apartment with this new information churning in my mind. Called Jacob immediately. We need to check if there was another will drafted. If my mother tried to change it after Eugene refused to help. It took 2 weeks of subpoenaing records from every attorney in the county. But we found it. A second will, drafted by an attorney named Martin Chambers, a friend of my father's. Filed 3 weeks before my grandfather died. This second will left everything to my mother Patricia, with her discretion to divide assets among her children as she saw fit. But this will was never probated, never used. The original will, leaving the lake house to me, was the one submitted to probate court. Why didn't they use this will? I asked Jacob. Because it would have been too obviously suspicious, he said. A dying man on pain medication suddenly changing his will at the end? With his daughter right there manipulating him? It would have been challenged immediately. They knew it wouldn't hold up. So they waited. Used the legitimate will. Then stole the property later through fraud. Exactly. More patient. More subtle. Harder to prove as a coordinated scheme. We added this information to our case. The fabricated will, Eugene's testimony, the letters from my grandfather. It painted a picture of long-term planning, of deliberate manipulation of a dying man, of a scheme that had been in motion for years. Meanwhile, my life continued to crumble. My unemployment benefits ran out. I was taking odd jobs where I could find them, driving for a delivery service, working overnight shifts, stocking shelves at a warehouse, anything to pay rent and keep the lights on. I hadn't spoken to anyone from my family in 4 months. Hadn't been invited to Thanksgiving, wouldn't be invited to Christmas. Amanda posted photos on social media of family gatherings. Everyone smiling, everyone happy, no empty chair for me. I was eating ramen noodles in my dim apartment when my phone buzzed with a Facebook message from someone I didn't know. You don't know me, but I saw your story in the news. My family went through something similar. There's a support group for people dealing with financial abuse from family members. We meet Tuesday evenings at the community center. You're welcome to join us. The message was from someone named Claire. I almost deleted it. The last thing I wanted was to sit in a circle and share feelings. But I had nowhere else to be. Nothing else to do. And I was so desperately alone. So, on Tuesday evening, I went. Sat in a circle with 12 other people who'd been stolen from, lied to, and betrayed by people they loved. People who'd lost inheritances, been forged out of properties, watched siblings steal from dying parents. Everyone had a story. Everyone had scars. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. After the meeting, Claire approached me. "The legal system moves slowly," she said. "But it does move. My case took 3 years. But I won eventually. Don't give up." I drove home that night, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not hope, exactly, but determination. A sense that this fight was bigger than just me. That standing up mattered, even when it cost everything. My phone rang. "Jacob, the restraining order renewal hearing is scheduled for next week. We have enough now to get it dismissed. Are you ready?" I'm ready. For the first time in months, I actually believed it. The restraining order renewal hearing took place on a cold December morning. 6 months had passed since Amanda's wedding. 6 months since my life had collapsed. This time, the judge was different. Judge Morrison, a woman in her 40s with a reputation for being thorough and skeptical. She reviewed the file carefully before the hearing even began. Jacob had prepared meticulously. We had phone records proving I'd never violated the original order. We had evidence that the initial order was obtained through misrepresentation. We had Ethan's testimony ready about my father's pattern of behavior. My parents arrived with their attorney, Richard Pemberton. They looked confident, comfortable. My mother wore pearls and a concerned expression. My father had his lawyer face on, all gravitas and respectability. Judge Morrison called the hearing to order. "I've reviewed the original petition and the request for renewal," she said. "Mr. Hartwell, your attorney has filed a motion to dismiss. Let's hear your arguments." Jacob stood. He was calm, measured, and devastating. He walked through every piece of evidence, showed how the original order was based on fabricated text messages, presented phone records showing I'd made no threats, brought up the falsified recording that led to my arrest and the subsequent dropping of charges. "Your Honor, this restraining order was obtained as part of a systematic campaign to harass my client and undermine his legitimate lawsuit against his parents. Gregory Hartwell is a retired attorney who knows how to manipulate the legal system. He's been using that knowledge to destroy his own son." Pemberton tried to object, but Judge Morrison raised a hand. "I'll hear from the petitioners now. Mrs. Hartwell, can you point to any specific incident where your son actually threatened you?" My mother hesitated. "Well, he was very aggressive when he came to our house." "Aggressive how? Did he touch you? Raise his hand to you? Threaten specific harm?" "He was emotionally aggressive. Very angry." "Being angry isn't grounds for a restraining order, Mrs. Hartwell. I'm asking about specific threats or actions." My mother looked at my father. He stepped in smoothly. "Your Honor, as a retired attorney, I recognize when someone's behavior is escalating. My son's pattern of anger, his lawsuit, his refusal to accept reason, all of this indicated he might become dangerous." "Might become dangerous isn't the standard," Judge Morrison said. "And I'm troubled by the fact that criminal charges were filed against your son based on evidence that turned out to be fabricated." "Miss Hartwell, you're the one who provided that recording?" Amanda shifted in her seat. "I recorded what I heard. The forensic analysis shows the recording was manipulated, stitched together from different sources. Do you dispute that finding?" My father helped me make it clearer, to make sure the police could hear the threats." "That's not making something clearer. That's fabricating evidence." The hearing lasted 90 minutes. By the end, Judge Morrison looked disgusted. "Motion to dismiss is granted. The restraining order is hereby lifted. And I'm going to add something to the record, Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell. I find your conduct in obtaining this order to be deeply troubling. You appear to have used the legal system to harass your son rather than to protect yourselves from any genuine threat. That kind of abusive process is unacceptable." My father's jaw tightened. My mother looked genuinely shocked. They weren't used to judges who didn't believe them. We walked out of the courthouse. Jacob put a hand on my shoulder. "That's your first real win. Savor it." I did. For about 5 minutes. Then I got back to work. The restraining order being lifted meant I could move more freely. Meant I could gather evidence without worrying about violating court orders. Meant I could fight back properly. Jacob had more news. The DA has decided to file criminal charges. They're going forward with fraud, forgery, and filing a false police report. Your parents and Amanda are all being charged. When? Indictments should come down next week. They did. On a Tuesday morning, my parents and sister were formally charged with multiple felonies. The news made the local paper. Retired attorney charged with defrauding own son. My phone started ringing. Family members who'd cut me off months ago suddenly wanted to talk, suddenly had questions. Aunt Carol called, crying, "William, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Your father told us you were having a breakdown. We believed him." "I know. Can you forgive me?" "I don't know yet." She accepted that. Uncle Thomas sent a long email apologizing. Several cousins reached out on social media. But the damage was done. They'd believed my father over me, chosen his lies over my truth. That wasn't something I could just forget. The criminal case moved forward, but I knew my parents would have one more play, one desperate attempt to stop everything. It came 2 days later. I was at my apartment when police knocked on my door, again. For a moment, I thought it was another false arrest, but the officer's expression was different this time. "Mr. Hartwell, we need to take you in for questioning. Your sister has filed another report claiming you threatened her life." I called Jacob before I said anything. He met me at the station. This time, Amanda claimed I'd called and threatened to burn down her house with her inside. That I'd described in detail how I'd do it. "Check my phone records," I said calmly. "I haven't called her. I haven't contacted her at all. Since the restraining order was lifted, I've followed every rule." They did check. And just like before, my phone records showed no calls to Amanda's number, no calls to my parents, no contact of any kind. The detective handling the case looked at Amanda's report, then at my phone records, then back at Amanda's report. "Miss Hartwell, these records show your brother didn't call you. He used a different phone. A burner phone. Do you have any evidence of that?" "I just know it was him." The detective sighed, looked at Jacob. "We're not charging him. There's no evidence. But we are very interested in talking to Miss Hartwell about filing false reports." I was released after 2 hours. As I walked out, Jacob was smiling. They just handed us even more ammunition. The DA is adding another count of filing a false report. Your sister just made things exponentially worse for herself. The next week, the DA's office held a press conference. They were making an example of my case, talking about elder abuse, family financial fraud, the importance of protecting vulnerable people from those who'd exploit them. My father's reputation, carefully built over 30 years, crumbled in a matter of days. His former law firm released a statement distancing themselves from him. The state bar opened a formal ethics investigation. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors stopped waving. Amanda's marriage was falling apart. Brandon's family, prominent in the local community, was horrified to be associated with the scandal. His mother made it clear that an annulment was being discussed. The $170,000 wedding, paid for with stolen money, was becoming the source of Amanda's social destruction. Meanwhile, I'd been working on something else, something my parents didn't know about, something I'd hinted at during that confrontation 6 months ago. "Check your mail," I'd said. They'd laughed then, thought I was bluffing. They were about to find out I wasn't. I'd spent months compiling everything, every piece of evidence, every lie they'd told, every crime they'd committed, and I'd put it all into a comprehensive dossier. 30 pages, professionally bound, with exhibits and documentation. I'd sent it everywhere, to every family member, to all their friends, to their church, to my father's old law firm, to Amanda's in-laws, to the local newspaper and several regional outlets, to the State Bar Association, all mailed the same day, timed to arrive simultaneously. That day was tomorrow. My mother's call came at 8 in the morning. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "What did you do? What did you send?" I was making coffee in my small apartment kitchen. I'd been expecting this call. "What do you mean?" I asked calmly. "Everyone we know got a package. A big envelope. From you." "What's in it?" "Oh, that. You should check your mail, Mom. I'm sure you got one too." I hung up, poured my coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, and waited. The dossier I'd mailed was comprehensive, devastating, and completely factual. The cover page read, "The truth about Gregory and Patricia Hartwell, a pattern of fraud, elder abuse, and family betrayal." Inside, laid out in clear, chronological detail. The timeline of events, starting with my grandfather's illness and death. Eugene Hartwell's statement about my mother trying to manipulate the dying man. The two wills, the legitimate one, and the one my parents had tried to create. The forged documents used to steal my house. The home equity loan. The sale of the property. The Florida condo purchase. Every financial transaction traced and documented. Ethan Sullivan's testimony about what my father had done to his family 10 years ago. Pattern and practice of elder abuse and fraud. The fabricated text messages used to obtain the restraining order. The audio forensic analysis showing Amanda's recording was manufactured. Screenshots of the real messages versus what was submitted to court. Bank records showing my parents' spending spree after selling my house. The luxury condo, the new car, the expensive jewelry, all purchased with money stolen from their own son. And the piece that made it all undeniable. Recordings. I'd hired a private investigator months ago. In Connecticut, you only need one-party consent to record a conversation. The PI had arranged a chance encounter with my father at a restaurant. Got him talking. Got him comfortable. Got him bragging. The recording captured my father laughing about teaching that idiot kid a lesson about family hierarchy. Joking about how William thought he could fight us, but he's got no idea how the system works. Talking about how the wedding was the perfect cover story for what we really wanted. All of it, recorded and transcribed, included in the dossier. I'd mailed it to 47 extended family members. 30-plus households from their church directory. Every partner at my father's old law firm. All of Amanda's in-laws, including Brandon's parents, grandparents, and siblings. The local newspaper, regional news outlets, the State Bar Association, all timed to arrive on the same day. My phone started ringing constantly. I let most calls go to voicemail, but I listened to the messages. Aunt Carol. Oh my God, William. I'm reading this and I'm horrified. We had no idea. We're so sorry. Uncle Thomas. Your father lied to all of us. About everything. I can't believe I didn't see it. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. I'm sorry we didn't believe you. This is awful. Then calls from people I didn't know. A reporter from the local paper. A producer from a regional news station. The State Bar's ethics investigator. The church pastor called my parents. I heard about it later from Aunt Carol. He told them their membership was being reconsidered pending the outcome of the criminal case. That the church couldn't be associated with this kind of scandal. My father's old law firm released a second statement, stronger than the first. Gregory Hartwell's actions are antithetical to everything our firm stands for. He retired from our practice 5 years ago, and his conduct since then has been reprehensible. The local newspaper ran a full story. Not just a brief mention, but an investigative piece. They'd gotten the dossier, verified the facts, interviewed Ethan Sullivan, talked to Eugene Hartwell, obtained court records. The headline read, "How a retired lawyer allegedly orchestrated a years-long scheme to defraud his own son." It went viral locally, shared thousands of times on social media. People love a good villain story, especially when the villain is someone who'd presented themselves as respectable and upstanding. Amanda called me. She was crying so hard, I could barely understand her. "You've destroyed us. Brandon's family is furious. His mother says the marriage was a mistake. You've ruined everything." "I didn't ruin anything," I said. My voice was calm, measured. "You did. You made the choice to participate in stealing from me. You made the choice to lie. You filed false police reports. You fabricated evidence. Every consequence you're facing now is the direct result of your own actions. We're family. How could you do this to family? You sold my house. You lied about me to everyone we know. You tried to have me arrested on false charges. You did this to yourself, Amanda." She was still crying when I hung up. 3 days later, Brandon filed for divorce. His family was prominent in the community. Old money, respected name. They'd been mortified when the criminal charges came down. The dossier was the final straw. They wanted nothing to do with the Hartwell family scandal. Amanda moved back in with our parents. The perfect fairy tale marriage, destroyed after 8 months. My parents tried damage control. They hired a public relations consultant, tried to spin the story, claimed I was mentally unstable and had fabricated evidence. But the evidence wasn't fabricated. The forensic analysis was real. The court records were public. Ethan's case was documented. My grandfather's letters existed. The audio recording of my father bragging was genuine. There was no spinning this. No way to make it better. The truth was simply too overwhelming. The criminal trial was scheduled for March. But before then, the civil lawsuit had to be resolved. My father's attorney advised him to settle. "You're going to lose," Pemberton told him. "The evidence is overwhelming, and after the criminal conviction, the civil case will be even worse. Settle now, while you still have some control." My father refused, arrogant to the end, convinced he could talk his way out of it, convinced his reputation still mattered, convinced he was smarter than everyone else. The civil trial lasted 3 days. Jacob presented our case methodically. Every forged document, every financial transaction, every lie. Ethan testified about my father's previous scheme. Eugene testified about my mother's attempts to manipulate my dying grandfather. My father's defense was weak, claimed everything was a misunderstanding, that he'd had verbal permission from me to sell the house, that the signatures were legitimate, that the Florida condo was a coincidence. The jury didn't believe him. How could they? The evidence was overwhelming. Verdict: liable for fraud, conversion, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Damages: the full value of my lake house at $350,000, plus the $200,000 home equity loan, plus punitive damages of $125,000. Total: $675,000. My father's face went white. My mother started crying. Amanda just stared straight ahead. The criminal trial was even more decisive. The district attorney had built an ironclad case. Multiple counts of fraud and forgery. Filing false police reports, attempting to obstruct justice. The jury convicted on every count. Sentencing day arrived 4 months later. The courtroom was packed. Family members, reporters, people from the support group I'd been attending. Even some of my parents' former friends, there out of morbid curiosity. The judge was stern. "Mr. Hartwell, you were an officer of the court, an attorney with decades of experience. You knew exactly what you were doing when you defrauded your own son. You exploited your legal knowledge to prey on vulnerable people, including your dying father-in-law. This is one of the more egregious cases of family financial abuse I've encountered." Gregory Hartwell. 4 years in federal prison. Patricia Hartwell. 2 years. Amanda took a plea deal. 3 years probation and 500 hours of community service. Additionally, they were ordered to pay full restitution. The civil judgment of $675,000, plus interest and court costs. To pay it, they had to sell everything. The Florida condo went first, then their primary residence, the house I'd grown up in. They moved into a small apartment, their savings gone, their retirement destroyed, their reputation in ruins. As my father was led away in handcuffs, he looked at me. There was no remorse in his eyes, just hatred, pure, undiluted hatred. My mother wouldn't look at me at all. Amanda stood in the gallery, her face blank, her marriage over, her reputation destroyed, her parents headed to prison, all because of $170,000 and a wedding that seemed important at the time. I walked out of that courthouse with Jacob beside me. "It's over," he said. "You won." "Yeah," I said, "I won." But winning didn't feel the way I'd expected. There was relief, certainly. Justice had been served, but there was also a profound sadness. My family was gone. Not just estranged, but truly gone. The parents who'd raised me, however imperfectly, were criminals. My sister, who I'd once protected, was a liar and a fraud. I'd won the case. But I'd lost my family, and I wasn't sure which hurt more. 6 months after the sentencing, I stood on the dock of my new house. Not the original lake house in Connecticut. That was gone. Sold to a family from Boston who knew nothing about its history. This was different, smaller. In New Hampshire, far from the town where I'd grown up, but it was mine, bought with the restitution money. The lake stretched out before me, calm and clear in the late summer evening. A loon called from somewhere across the water. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting everything gold. I'd rebuilt my life piece by piece, New job at a different financial firm, one that had actually done their due diligence and saw me as the victim I was. New house in a new state. A fresh start away from all the memories. My credit was slowly recovering. My savings account was no longer empty. Some family members had reached out to apologize. Aunt Carol visited once, spent an afternoon crying and apologizing and trying to explain why she'd believed my father. I'd accepted her apology, but kept my distance. Trust, once shattered, doesn't reassemble easily. Uncle Thomas sent letters. My younger cousins reached out on social media, sheepish and apologetic. I responded to some, ignored others, created boundaries around who I'd let back into my life. Amanda sent one email, about 3 months after the sentencing. The subject line was just, "I'm sorry." The message was brief. I was wrong. I see that now. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I don't blame you if you never want to speak to me again. But I needed you to know that I understand what we did was unforgivable. I was greedy and selfish, and I destroyed my own brother for a wedding that didn't even matter. I'm sorry. I read it 3 times, then archived it without responding. Maybe someday I'd be ready to respond, but not now. The wound was still too fresh. My parents were in prison. I'd received one letter from my father, forwarded through their attorney. I threw it away without opening it. Whatever he had to say, I didn't need to hear. He'd said everything that mattered when he laughed about stealing from me, when he forged my signature, when he tried to destroy my life to cover up his crimes. I thought about my grandfather often, sat on this new dock, and imagined him sitting beside me, the way he used to at the old lake house. He'd left me that property because he saw the favoritism, saw the injustice, wanted to give me something that was just mine. The property itself was gone, but his gift remained. He'd given me the knowledge that I mattered, that I deserved to be treated fairly, that I shouldn't accept betrayal just because it came from family. I'd learned hard lessons over the past year. Lessons earned through pain and loss, and a legal battle that had cost me nearly everything. The first lesson. Family isn't just about blood. Real family doesn't betray you. Real family doesn't steal from you and then mock you for being upset about it. Blood relation doesn't excuse cruelty, doesn't justify theft, doesn't give anyone the right to destroy you for their own benefit. The family I was born into failed me, but I'd found new family. Jacob, my attorney, had become a genuine friend. We had dinner once a month now, talked about things that had nothing to do with lawsuits. The people from the support group, strangers who'd become allies, who understood what it meant to be betrayed by people you loved. Even Aunt Carol and Uncle Thomas, carefully rebuilding trust, learning to be the family they should have been all along. The second lesson. Standing up for yourself is worth the cost, even when it means losing everything, even when it means being alone and broke and scared. The alternative is to let people walk all over you, to live as a victim, to accept injustice, because fighting is too hard. I could have dropped the lawsuit, could have walked away, could have let them keep my house and my inheritance and my dignity. My father gave me that option multiple times, but I fought. And the fighting cost me my job, my apartment, my savings, months of my life, and most of my family relationships. And it was still worth it, because the alternative was to spend the rest of my life knowing I'd let them win, knowing I'd surrendered my grandfather's gift without a fight, knowing I'd accepted being treated as less than, as unimportant, as someone whose rights didn't matter. I couldn't live with that. So I fought. And even though the fight was brutal, I'd do it again. The third lesson. Justice is slow and painful, but it's real. The legal system isn't perfect. It's slow and expensive, and often favors those with money and connections. My father knew how to manipulate it. He had decades of experience and a network of professional relationships. But truth is powerful. Evidence is powerful. And persistence is powerful. It took a year. It cost $50,000 in legal fees. It required finding allies like Ethan and Eugene, building an overwhelming case, exposing every lie, documenting every crime. But justice did come. My parents went to prison. I got restitution. The truth came out. The system worked, eventually, but only because I refused to give up. The fourth lesson. Some battles have to be fought even when you don't want to fight them. I didn't want to sue my parents. Didn't want to stand in a courtroom and testify against my own mother. Didn't want to see my father led away in handcuffs. But they left me no choice. They stole from me, lied about me, tried to destroy me. And if I hadn't fought back, they would have succeeded. Sometimes the alternative to fighting is surrendering your dignity. And your dignity is worth fighting for. The final lesson. You can rebuild after betrayal. It doesn't feel like it at the time. When you're sitting in a cheap apartment eating ramen noodles, unemployed and in debt, and cut off from everyone you know, it feels like the end. But it wasn't the end. It was just the hard part in the middle. I rebuilt, found new work, made new friends, created new family from people who'd proven they deserved my trust, bought a new house on a new lake, in a new state. The scars remained. I was more careful now, more skeptical, slower to trust. The wounds of betrayal don't completely heal, but I survived. More than survived. I rebuilt a life that was mine, on my terms, free from people who'd proven they didn't value me. A car pulled into my driveway. Jacob and his wife, coming over for dinner. Aunt Carol and Uncle Thomas were coming too. A small gathering, carefully constructed from people who'd earned their place in my life. I walked up from the dock to greet them. Jacob carried a bottle of wine. His wife had made a dessert. Aunt Carol hugged me carefully, still tentative, still rebuilding trust. We gathered on the deck, grilled burgers and corn, talked about everything except the past. Jacob told a story about a difficult client. His wife talked about her job as a teacher. Uncle Thomas described his recent fishing trip. Normal conversation, normal evening, normal life. As the sun set completely and stars began appearing, I looked around at these people, this chosen family, the ones who'd either stood by me or admitted their mistakes and genuinely changed. I thought about Amanda's wedding, $170,000 for one day, ice sculptures and imported flowers and a dress she wore once, all bought with stolen money, all destroyed within a year, when Brandon's family couldn't handle the scandal. I thought about my parents in prison, their reputation destroyed, their comfortable retirement replaced with a tiny apartment and empty bank accounts. I thought about the cost of their greed, not just the money, but everything else. Their freedom, their relationships, their son, their dignity. And I thought about what my grandfather had really given me. Not just a house, but the knowledge that I deserved better, that I mattered, that I was worth fighting for. The house was gone, but the lesson remained. I'd honored his gift. I'd fought for myself. I'd refused to accept betrayal and injustice. I'd stood up even when it cost everything. And in the end, I'd built something better than what I'd lost. The evening stretched on. Laughter around the table. Friends who'd become family. A house that was truly mine. A life I'd reconstructed from the ruins of what my parents had destroyed. My grandfather would have been proud. As everyone was leaving, Jacob pulled me aside. "You doing okay?" "Yeah," I said. And I meant it. "I'm good. You've come a long way from that day in my office when you could barely afford the retainer." "We both have." He smiled. "You know what the best part is? Your father thought he was so smart. Thought he could outmaneuver you because he was a lawyer, and you were just some guy with a regular job. But he underestimated you. He underestimated a lot of things. Pride goes before a fall," Jacob said. Biblical wisdom. Turns out it's true. After everyone left, I sat on the dock again. The stars were bright, reflected in the still water. Somewhere across the lake, that loon called again. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, found Amanda's apology from months ago. Read it one more time. Then I hit reply. "I'm not ready to rebuild our relationship. I don't know if I ever will be. But I forgive you, not for you, for me. Because carrying that anger was destroying me. You made terrible choices. You hurt me deeply. Those are facts that won't change. But I'm choosing to let go of the hatred. I hope you find a way to rebuild your life. I hope you learn from this. But that's your journey, not mine." Goodbye, Amanda. I hit send. Then I blocked her email address. Forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It just meant I was done carrying the weight of her choices. The water lapped gently against the dock. The night air was cool and clean. Tomorrow I had work, had bills to pay, had a life to continue building. But tonight, I just sat and appreciated what I'd survived, what I'd rebuilt, what I'd become. My grandfather left me that lake house because he believed in me. And even though that specific house was gone, even though the path to this moment had been brutal, I'd proven he was right to believe. I'd survived my family's betrayal. I'd fought for justice and won. I'd rebuilt my life from nothing. They'd tried to break me, and I'd refused to break. That was the real victory. Not the money, not the criminal convictions, not even the restitution. The victory was that I'd stood up for myself. That I'd refused to accept injustice. That I'd fought back even when it cost everything. My dignity was mine, and they couldn't take it unless I let them. I never let them. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to stand up against someone you loved? Someone who betrayed your trust and expected you to just accept it because they were family? How did you handle it? Did you fight? Or did you walk away? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone else who's facing the same impossible choice. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that standing up for yourself is worth the cost. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives you strength if you're fighting your own battles. Remember, your dignity is yours alone. Nobody can take it unless you let them. Take care of yourselves out there, and never stop fighting for what's right, even when it's hard.